Your dad called immigration and reported my husband as illegal because he would ruin the photos at my sister's wedding, so I went to the wedding with an envelope in my hand. No one expected what it contained. Betrayal hurts most when it comes from your own blood. I learned that the hard way. When I met Eduardo 3 years ago at the coffee shop where we both worked, I knew I had found something special. He came from Guatemala with a dream and a lot of determination, just like my grandparents did from Italy decades ago. The difference is that my grandparents were called immigrants, and Eduardo, my dad, always called him illegal, though never to his face, of course. You should look for someone more stable, my father told me the first time I told them about Eduardo. I was 26 years old, an independent adult with my own apartment and job, but for Jorge Mendez, respected accountant of the neighborhood and self-proclaimed infallible patriarch, my life was still territory under his jurisdiction. Eduardo and I got married a year ago in a small ceremony. Only my two best friends and his cousin who lives here came. My family was conspicuously absent. It's too rushed. You barely know him. Are you sure it's not for the papers? All excuses to hide what really bothered them: his last name, his accent, the color of his skin. Even so, we tried to do things right. Eduardo was in the process of regularizing his situation. We had a lawyer, we had submitted all the documents, and we were waiting for the resolution. It was a matter of time. I was calm because I knew we were on the right path. The following Sunday was the family lunch at my parents' house, a monthly tradition that Eduardo and I had avoided since our wedding. But this time I decided to go alone. I needed to confront them face to face about the invitation. The house was the same, immaculate, cold, with that expensive furniture that no one really used. My mother greeted me with a tense hug, as if she didn't know how much contact was appropriate after months without seeing each other. "Carolina, what a surprise," said my father, entering the living room. "And your husband?" The way he pronounced husband, as if it were a dirty word, churned my stomach. "He wasn't invited, remember?" I replied without greeting him. During lunch, Daniela and Gonzalo wouldn't stop talking about the wedding details, the imported flowers, the band that would play, the important guests. My mother nodded enthusiastically, while my father smiled proudly. It was the perfect moment. "So, Eduardo can't attend because he would ruin the photos, right?" I blurted out between the first and second courses. The silence was instantaneous. My father placed his cutlery on the table with millimeter precision. "Don't put words in my mouth, Carolina." "Then why isn't he invited? We're a married couple." "It's complicated," my mother interjected nervously. "There are a lot of important people." "And what? Are you ashamed for them to see who I married?" "It's not shame," replied my father with that condescending tone he used when he thought he was educating someone inferior. "It's common sense. There are partners, clients, people who wouldn't understand." "What wouldn't they understand?" "That your daughter married someone who works hard, who respects me, who loves me, with someone who shouldn't even be in this country." I finally exploded. And there it was, the raw truth, unadorned, the contempt that had always been there, now exposed on the table like a dish no one wanted to try. "Jorge, please," whispered my mother. "What? Is it the truth?" "That boy doesn't have his papers in order, we all know it." "And what if they deport your husband in the middle of the ceremony? Can you imagine the scandal?" "Eduardo is in the process of regularization," I replied, my voice trembling. "We have a lawyer. We've submitted all the documents." "Please, Carolina," Daniela intervened. "Think of me, for once. It's my wedding." I stood up slowly, leaving the napkin on the table. "It's always been about you, about appearances, about what other people will say. It's never been about family, about love, about real happiness." My father also stood up. "If you care so much, stay with your illegal and forget about us." "Jorge," my mother warned, horrified. "It's the truth, Sylvia. Our daughter decides to marry an undocumented immigrant and expects us to welcome him with open arms, to put our reputation at risk." "The one who should be ashamed is me," I replied with the firmest voice I could find. Ashamed to have such a small-minded father, so full of prejudice. Eduardo is 10 times the man you'll ever be. I left there with trembling legs but my back straight. For the first time in my life, I had said exactly what I thought in front of my father. I had no idea of the storm I had just unleashed. Last week, the invitation to my sister Daniela's wedding arrived. An elegant envelope, expensive paper, gold lettering. Dear Carolina Mendez, it said. Just my name. I called immediately. It's just that Mom and Dad think it's better this way, Daniela explained softly. You know how Dad's weddings are. All his partners will be there, important people. And Eduardo isn't important enough, I retorted, feeling my blood boil. Caro, please understand, it's my special day. It wasn't her special day. It was my father's special day, who was paying for every detail of the perfect wedding for his perfect daughter with the perfect son-in-law. Gonzalo, son of one of his partners, with a recognizable last name and skin light enough not to ruin the damn photos. On Tuesday, I didn't receive Eduardo's usual message during his work break. I didn't give it much importance until the hours passed, and he didn't answer my calls either. At 6 p.m., when he should have been arriving home, the doorbell rang. It wasn't Eduardo, but Miguel, his coworker. They came for him this morning, he said, almost breathless. Immigration agents took him away in handcuffs from the restaurant, in front of everyone. The floor seemed to disappear beneath my feet. Miguel held me when my knees buckled. How? It's impossible. We're in process, we have a lawyer. Someone called them specifically for him. The boss tried to explain that Eduardo had his papers in process, but they wouldn't listen. I spent the following hours in a hell of calls to the lawyer, to the immigration office, to all the contacts that could help us. Finally, close to midnight, I managed to speak with Eduardo on the phone from the detention center. Love, I'm fine, he said in a tired voice. Don't worry. How am I not going to worry? They've detained you as if you were a criminal. The lawyer says it's a misunderstanding, that we can prove it. He tried to calm me down, but I knew that tone. He was scared, but he didn't want me to worry more. That night, I didn't sleep. I checked the documents, the emails, the letters, again and again. Everything was in order. Someone had deliberately interfered. The next morning, the lawyer confirmed my suspicions. There was a specific complaint against Eduardo. Someone provided his workplace, schedules, everything. It wasn't a random raid. A chill ran down my spine. Can you find out who made the complaint? It's confidential information, but please, I begged. It's important. That afternoon, I returned to my parents' house unannounced. I needed to confront my suspicions, although I prayed to be wrong. My mother opened the door, surprised. Carolina? What's wrong? You're pale. I went straight to my father's office. He was there, reviewing papers, as neat and serene as ever. He looked at me as if I were just another client arriving at his consultation. They took him, I said without preamble. They came to his work and took Eduardo away. I saw something in his eyes, not surprise, but satisfaction. It was just a flicker, quickly replaced by a neutral expression. It's a shame, but it was foreseeable. You did it, it wasn't a question. You called immigration. He slowly took off his glasses, cleaned them with a handkerchief, and put them back on. His ritual when he was preparing to give an important speech. I did what I had to do as a citizen. Laws exist for a reason. The following days were hell. The lawyer fought to get Eduardo released while we gathered evidence that his residency process was underway. I barely slept, divided between visits to the detention center, legal consultations, and my job, which I couldn't miss because we needed the money more than ever. The problem is that someone influential made the complaint, explained Ramiro, our lawyer. They mentioned suspicion of illegal activities in addition to the immigration situation. Illegal activities? Eduardo works 12 hours a day in a restaurant. I know, but that's how the system works. An accusation like that complicates everything. My father hadn't just reported Eduardo, he had fabricated lies to make sure he was deported quickly. The rage I felt was like a constant fire in my chest. During one of my visits, Eduardo asked me not to go to the wedding. "It's not worth it, my love," he said with that sad look that broke my heart. "Your sister isn't to blame. Don't you understand? I can't pretend nothing happened, not after what he did. Revenge will only bring more pain." But it wasn't revenge I was planning, it was justice. That afternoon, I visited Marta, my parents' former housekeeper. She had worked for them for 20 years until my father fired her without severance or a letter of recommendation when he discovered that her son, who sometimes helped her at the house, didn't have papers. "Your dad has always been like that," she told me as she served me coffee in her small apartment. "Very proper in public, but another thing in private. I need your help, Marta. I know Dad keeps important documents in his safe." She looked at me intently. "What are you thinking of doing, girl?" What I should have done a long time ago. Confront him with his own contradictions. Marta knew the combination to the safe. My father had never changed it, convinced that a woman like her would never dare betray him. Classism and arrogance were always his blind spots. The next day, I took advantage of my parents attending a wedding rehearsal to enter the house with the key I still kept. In the office, I opened the safe with the combination Marta had given me, my father's birth date. As predictable as he was. What I found confirmed my suspicions: falsified invoices, manipulated tax returns, evidence of an undeclared account in Panama. My father, the same one who boasted of righteousness, who reported Eduardo for being illegal, had been evading taxes and laundering money for some of his clients for years. I meticulously photographed everything and saved the evidence on a USB drive. Then, back at home, I prepared an elegant envelope of the same expensive paper they had used for the wedding invitations. The Church of San Ignacio was decorated like a fairy tale, white flowers everywhere, silk ribbons hanging from the pews, an impeccable red carpet leading to the altar. Everything so perfect that it was suffocating, as fake as the family celebrating their perfect union. I arrived just as the ceremony was about to begin. I felt the surprised looks as I walked down the side aisle until I found a place in the last row. My dark blue dress contrasted with the pastel colors that predominated among the guests. I hadn't come to blend in. I saw my mother turn nervously from the front row. Our eyes met, and I could read the silent plea in hers. "Please behave." It had always been like this, maintaining appearances at all costs. The wedding march began, and we all stood up. Daniela appeared on my father's arm, radiant in her designer dress. For a moment, I felt a pang of pain. We were sisters. We had shared secrets, laughter, dreams. When had we allowed classism and prejudice to separate us so much? My father, imposing in his tailored suit, smiled proudly as he gave his daughter away at the altar. Jorge Mendez, the respectable man, the exemplary citizen, the defender of laws and good customs. If everyone only knew who he really was. The ceremony went by like a well-rehearsed play. Perfect vows, contained tears at the right moment, measured applause. I observed the guests, the local elite, doctors, lawyers, businessmen, politicians. The select circle that my father valued so much. I wondered how many of them also hid secrets behind their impeccable facades. During the reception at an exclusive country club, I kept a low profile. I didn't want to attract attention, not yet. I avoided the family table and sat with some distant cousins who greeted me with a mixture of curiosity and compassion. Everyone knew about Eduardo. Rumors spread quickly in these circles. "And your husband?" asked an aunt, feigning innocence. "He had an unexpected inconvenience," I replied with a tense smile. After dinner, the speeches began. First the godparents, then some close friends. Finally, my father stood up, glass in hand, to give his speech. The room fell silent. "Today is one of the proudest days of my life," he began in a firm voice. "Seeing my daughter join such a respectable family, building a solid future based on values and principles." Every word churned my stomach. Values, principles, respect. Empty words in the mouth of a hypocrite. In our family, he continued, we have always valued honesty, hard work, and respect for the laws that make our country great. I couldn't contain myself. I stood up slowly with the envelope in my hand. Some heads turned towards me. I saw my mother tense up, Daniela's eyes widen in horror. I hope you'll allow me to add a few words, I said in a clear voice as I approached the center of the room. My father stood motionless, his glass suspended in the air. For the first time in my life, I saw something I had never seen in his eyes: fear. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Carolina, the other daughter, I began. I'm sorry to come without my husband, Eduardo. He would have loved to be here, but unfortunately he was detained by immigration a few days ago, thanks to an anonymous complaint. A murmur ran through the room. Several guests exchanged uncomfortable glances. My father has just spoken about values, honesty, and respect for the law, I continued as I slowly opened the envelope. I completely agree with him. Honesty must be the pillar of any family. The tension was palpable. All eyes were fixed on me and the envelope I held in my hands. My father stepped forward, trying to regain control of the situation. Carolina, this is not the time or the place, he said with a forced smile, extending his hand towards me. Are you ruining your sister's special day? Ruining, I repeated with a calmness I didn't even know I possessed. Like you ruined my husband's life? Like you've ruined ours with your hypocrisy. From the envelope, I took out several photographs and held them up so everyone could see them. For those who don't know, my father reported my husband to immigration because, according to his exact words, he would ruin the wedding photos. An immigrant worker who pays his taxes and is in the process of regularization. Meanwhile, I spread the documents out in front of me. A deathly silence fell over the room. These are records of undeclared accounts in Panama, falsified invoices, manipulated tax returns. My father, who so strongly defends law and order, has been defrauding the state for years. The same state whose immigration laws he now uses as a weapon against my family. My father's face had transformed into a mask of fury and panic. Several of his partners, sitting at nearby tables, shifted uncomfortably in their seats. That's slander, he stammered. They're manipulated documents. Really? I asked, holding up the USB drive. Here are the originals, with dates, signatures, and everything. Exact copies of what you keep in your safe, Dad. The tax police can easily verify them. My mother had risen, pale as a ghost. Daniela wept silently next to her new husband, who looked bewildered. If you care so much about the laws, I continued, why have you been evading taxes for years? Why do you help your clients hide their money? Are there laws that can be broken and others that cannot? Or is it only illegal when someone with an accent or a different skin color does it? I saw some guests discreetly begin to get up, preparing to leave. No one wanted to be associated with such a scandal, especially those who might also have something to hide. The saddest thing, I said, lowering my voice a little so they would have to strain to hear, is that you did all this for appearances, so that the wedding photos would be perfect, to maintain your image as a respectable man. But true respectability doesn't come from appearances, Dad. It comes from integrity. My father took a step towards me, almost stumbling. For a moment, I thought he was going to try to snatch the documents from me. But then the doors of the room opened. We all turned to see who was arriving so late to the reception. My heart skipped a beat. Eduardo was there, standing at the entrance in a formal suit and a serene expression. Beside him were Ramiro, our lawyer, and a man in a suit whom I recognized immediately. It was Carlos Vega, head of the tax crimes unit. Sorry to interrupt, Eduardo said clearly as he walked towards me. The traffic was impossible. He stood beside me and took my hand. I felt his fingers tremble slightly, but his face showed absolute calm. Mr. Mendez, Agent Vega said, approaching my father. We have some questions about your tax returns for the past 5 years. It's been 6 months since Daniela's wedding. Life has changed for everyone in ways we never imagined. My father was formally charged with tax evasion and forgery. Thanks to a good lawyer and his previous record without prior offenses, He reached an agreement to avoid prison. But he had to pay a hefty fine and now performs community service. His prestigious accounting firm collapsed when his clients began to abandon him for fear of being involved in the scandal. I see him occasionally when I visit my mother. He's thinner, his hair completely gray. Sometimes we sit in silence on the back porch, looking at the garden they can no longer afford to keep so immaculate. We haven't really talked about what happened. Maybe someday, but for now silence is all we can handle. My mother has changed, surprisingly. Without the constant pressure from my father, she has rediscovered who she really is. She has started painting again, something she gave up when she got married. Sometimes she comes to dinner at our house and genuinely tries to get to know Eduardo. Eduardo received his residency permit 2 months ago. The case against him collapsed when it was shown that the complaint was based on false information. He now works as a chef in a small restaurant and is studying business administration at night. Daniela and Gonzalo returned from their honeymoon to a reality very different from what they expected. A month ago, Daniela called me for coffee. It was our first real conversation in a long time. "You were right," she said. "It was always about appearances. Sometimes the truth hurts. And ours, although painful, freed us all from a life of lies. Behind the perfect appearances lie the darkest truths. Dignity is not in maintaining an impeccable image before others, but in defending what is right, even if it means confronting your own family. The value of a person is not measured by their status, their origin, or their documents, but by their actions and the integrity with which they live."